Good morning, Year 9s. I would like us to try and do this lesson like we normally would have in class. This is your starter for today. Could you please pause this video and do the starter first, and then we will go through each of these questions before we do today's lesson. Okay, I've assumed you've paused this. You've written this down in your book, you've tried each of these questions, and now I would like to go through with you each one of these. So the first question, I would like you to remember that when you solve these questions, you always have to show your working. So please show your working where needed. And always the layout of your work should always be the equal signs underneath each other instead of having a number sentence that way. So the question number 1, I'm going to write it in expanded form so that we can go over the basics of multiplying with letters. So a squared would be a times a to the power of 3 would be a times a times a. And if I simplify that, that would be a to the power of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 2. Here I would multiply number times number and then variable times variable. Remember, we can either have a dot or I could have added some brackets if I liked. All of those meant I multiply those two. So 2 times 5 would be 10. X to the power of 5, I'm going to just be thorough and write it in expanded form. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times the x there. So I'll add it right to the right at the end, and this simplifies then to x to the power of 6. Okay, number 3. Here the sign rules come in. So I would go sign times sign, number times number, variable times variable. So negative times a negative, remember the sign rules. If it's the same sign, the result would be a positive. If it's different signs, the result will be a negative. So a negative times a negative would be a positive. 2 times 3 would be 6. And b times b would be b squared. I don't have to write the plus there because a positive number is the plus is implied, so you don't have to write it's positive. Number 4, I'm going to have the same approach. These two positive numbers, or these two positives, so my sign would be positive. 5 times 6 would be 30. Then I've got a d squared times a d there. So d squared would be d times that d. E times e squared, which is e times e. So that's d to the power of 3, e to the power of 3. Okay, and now let's have a look at simplifying these fractions. Before I simplify this, I would like to remind you how it works when you simplify a fraction if you've got numbers. So if I had, let's say, 20 divided by 4. I can also rewrite 20 and 4 into the multiplication or multiplying their factors. So I'm going to choose, instead of saying 10 times 2, I'm going to choose 4 times 5. Because if I choose 4 times 5, then I can easily simplify this fraction because 4 goes into itself once and 4 goes into itself once, and it would be 5. Now, this idea I really want you to understand, because this is what we're using with algebraic fractions. I'm going to write it in expanded form, and then when you have it in expanded form, you could easily cancel out those numbers or the ones that correspond. And remember, even though I'm saying you're cancelling it out, it's actually 4 goes into itself once and 4 goes into itself. It's the number divided by itself. That's why the result is 1. All right, so this is the idea I really want you to understand. Now we're going to use the same on those questions. In the first one, if I go back to this one, those x's, the number would, whatever that number might be, it would be dividing the number by itself. Again, the number dividing by itself, the number dividing by itself, and there'll be an x left. You don't have to write it over 1. The over 1 is implied. You can, but that would be enough to just have equals to x. Now the same with this one. Y goes into the number, whichever number y would represent. The number divides by itself would be 1. The same with those. And be careful here, because at the top you don't have a 0 left. You've got a 1 left, because the number divided by itself results into 1. This would be like I would have 2 divided by 2, but I don't know the value of y. But again, I can use the same rules I use on numbers, I can use here as well. So that y could represent 2. That's why I'm saying that is a number divided by itself. That's not 0, that is 1. So be careful with this and remember this. So I have a y left in my denominator and a 1 left in the numerator spot. Right, in the next question, instead of having the expanded version, I've got a power x to the power of 3, x to the power of 2. You can, to simplify this easier for yourself, you can then write it in expanded form first, x to the power of 3, x to the power of 2, and then again the number divided by itself results into 1 and to 1 again, and we have x. Right, so this is our starter for today. This is what we've done on Wednesday that we are recapping. Please make sure you get these basics right, and you've got some notes on this in your book. So for today, I would like us to simplify algebraic fractions. So starting with a few questions, let me write it out here. I'm going to write this in expanded form first. So b to the power of 3 would be b times b times b over b times b. Again, the number divided by itself, number divided by itself, the result would be b. If we do this the other way around, let's have b squared over b to the power of 3, have this in expanded form, b times b over b times b times b. Those cancel out, those cancel out. I've got a 1 left at the top and I've got the b left at the bottom. Right, let's try where we add some numbers. Let's do 4a squared over 2a. So I'm going to write that out as a product of its primes. So that's 2 times 2, a times a, over 2a. Those 2 goes into the number divided by itself results into 1, the same with a. So what I have left is 2a at the top. Again, there is a number 1 at the bottom, but it's also implied. I don't have to write that. I can just have 2a. Right, and our last example would be negative 5x to the power of 2 over 25x to the power of 6. So with this example, you have to have a look at the signs first. So because your signs are different, the result would be a negative 5, and I'm just doing the expanded form there at the top. The 25 I'm going to write as a product of its primes, which is 5 times 5, and then x to the power of 6 in expanded form. Now I can start cancelling out. So 5 would go into, divided by itself would be 1. That would be 1, and that would be 1. So at the top, I would have a 1 left. At the bottom, I'll have a 5 and x to the power of 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, I've added a worksheet on our Google Classroom that I would like you to try. It's a combination of multiplying and dividing algebraic terms, and please let me know if there's any issues.